What does it mean to be proactive, preventative? Hi, this is Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. Several managers of mine in the operational risk management area taught me some valuable lessons around the concept of being proactive, preventative. Now, this is ideal in the operational risk environment because you have auditors. This is ideal in any environment where there's some element of compliance, and it is simply to anticipate regulatory, auditing, and compliance needs. So for example, if you have a risk in a category, you go ahead and look at your risk register to look at all the risks in that same category and go ahead and address them all at one time. It is a factor of categorization. It is a factor of clustering. It is a factor of being one step ahead of the potential audit situation. Now, some people might say that takes extra time, but really it's finding the minimum viable product to evidence your compliance with a law, rule, or regulation. Let me give you an example. There's a concept called address confidentiality. If a bank or a financial institution of some kind receives a notice that their address is to be confidential to the spouse, so there's a divorce, there's some kind of restraining order. This could be a utility company. This could be some other means where one partner has left and the business is legally obligated to protect the interest of the individual who requests address confidentiality. There are various characteristics of that risk that may apply to your business unit or may not apply to your business unit. So when you hear the general concept, address confidentiality, you go ahead and do a review of all your processes that pertain to the concept addressing each of the risks, even if a compliance group just raises one of 4 risks or one of 3 risks. The concept is staying ahead of the potential audit, of the potential review. Another such example is if another organization receives a consent order, you go ahead and review your organization on the concepts as if you received the consent order. Now, again, the businesses are going to complain. It sounds like extra work. It sounds like more things that we have to do. But the truth of the matter is, it's part of your natural job. It's part of reducing risk. It's part of working on that environment. And let me give you the most practical example possible. Your vehicle is due for maintenance. It needs an oil change. When you take your vehicle in for an oil change, most dealerships do a 21-point inspection or a 5-point inspection. See, your vehicle's already at the dealership. Now, yes, they do this as part of an upsell process, but your vehicle's already at the dealership, and while they're changing the oil, they can have someone else adjusting the brakes, adjusting the suspension, doing a tire rotation. They're proactively addressing the concerns that you have while addressing preventative measures to protect your interests as a client. In fact, it's an expectation you would have on the mechanic or on the dealership that's working on your vehicle, yet it is extra work for them. Well, is it extra work or is it a complete solution rather than ad hoc? Have you ever been in a situation where it feels like you're constantly chasing the demands and needs of other people? You're constantly having fires, you're constantly having surprises, and the business process that you implement is ad hoc at best. Well, with a proactive preventative approach, you're going to look at what potentially could go wrong and what preventative measures you can put in place to address it. If you have an annual quality inspection, why not divide the tasks up to make sure you have a positive inspection divided up each quarter? Do a little bit each quarter rather than rush in all at once. Now, there are people who want to rush in all at once because it feels like they're doing something valuable. But I learned this from my mother, that if you're going to clean your room, clean a little bit every day. And then eventually what happens is your room becomes clean, and then there's little effort required to go through the checklist to make sure everything is in order. It doesn't matter whether you're running a business, whether you're in a business, or you're on the receiving end of some kind of compliance activity. Why not divide the activity up so that you have a higher level of quality up front by being proactive and preventative in your day-to-day exercises? Here's another example. I was working in an organization that was supporting the remediation of software and hardware vulnerabilities. So software breaks, we all know that, and it has vulnerabilities. Well, these vulnerabilities were actually grouped up so that they could be addressed in one instance of downtime rather than revisiting the same environment over and over. That meant prioritizing risks. That meant prioritizing the remediations and the repairs so that you could work on critical and high activities as a primary function. But while you're there, go ahead and address the mediums and lows. If you're going to have the system down, why not solve as many problems as possible? This is a unique concept because I found that many organizations neglect and tend to wait for some compliance team or some audit team to come in and tell them what to do. I want you to make a list of the key areas that you need to have excellence. Identify what characteristics are necessary to maintain excellence, and then use these characteristics, incorporate it with your day-to-day activities to make the result of what you're doing today excellent. This is proactive. This is preventative. What can you do, that extra step, that extra mile, that makes sure that you're doing quality work so that you prevent risks, errors, and problems in the future? Now, I constantly am explaining this process. I'm constantly bringing up the concept and idea, and I'm sure that my mentors felt the same way. Why not do it quality right the first time? Why not do it in such a way that removes problems down the line? One example in an audit or regulatory environment is keeping good evidence of approvals and decisions. See, in hindsight, who knows why you made a decision? If there's no meeting minutes, if there's no decision criteria, if there's no problem statement and root cause, why did you do the work in the first place? Sometimes we have these off-the-hip responses to stimuli that could very often be a course of improving our overall quality so that we get more done with fewer resources. That means doing it right now rather than doing it again in the future. Proactive, preventative. Now, I know grammatically it doesn't make any sense. How can you be both proactive and preventative? Well, it's about thinking of your process. If something's going to break in your environment, let it not be the critical or high item. So what does that mean? Well, it means categorization, understanding what has high value and what has low value. How many times have you been chasing a problem that turns out to be not that important to the outcome that you're measured on? How many times has there been an escalation or a fire? Or worse, the management structure escalates everything. Everybody's frantic, going crazy. Why not just stop, listen, and start categorizing, prioritizing, and then doing the work that reduces the number of problems down the line? I worked with another team, and this lady would always tell us, don't kick the can down the road. If there's something we can do today to bundle the work up into what's called a minimum viable product, and that's going to identify what has to be done, and then layer on top of that those things that would be nice to do, and of course, together, that's addressing anything that might be a problem down the line. It's about understanding root cause. It's about focusing on important and critical tasks before you just do anything. Now, again, it means that the low items on your list may never get done, and that's fine. But what about those low items that over time become critical? Can you bundle those up and do them in such a way? Take the example of a car at a dealership. You want the interruption one time for the customer. Why not bundle in other activities? Why not educate the customer so that they know what other things should be done when they visit so that they can plan their time accordingly? Proactive preventative very much sets expectations that quality is a outcome of everyday activities. Your business as usual activities produce a certain level of quality. Again, in a regulatory environment, every activity produces some kind of tangible evidence that the activity was conducted in such a way that it's consistent with process, that it reduces risks, it went through the appropriate controls, and that it had the authority to do so. Now, you can't do this for everything, but again, you step back to the minimum viable. Where do we start to reduce the problems down the line? Now, you would think that most people don't create problems down the line on purpose. But there are people in your organization that do things ad hoc and haphazard because they don't see the future outcome or the future problem. In fact, that problem might be in a different part of your organization. So as an analyst, as a critical thinker, as a top producer, this is an opportunity for you to organize the way work is approached. Not only to approach the work in such a way that solves unspoken problems, but also conforms to the larger needs of an organization that might have quality control measures, that might have auditing or compliance, that might have applicable laws, rules, and regs. So again, if it's a high item, what related items can be addressed at the same time while you're clearing the higher critical item? If you have a larger portfolio of work, can we group it by computer system? So the remediation environment, it would be better to take a server down and do everything you need for that server than it would be to do the one task on 50 servers. There's the concepts of how you approach the work. There's also the concept of what would happen if the work is not done well today, and what would well work look like, so that we can do the work right the first time rather than doing the work over again. Now, there are metrics that you can layer on top of this because the transactional activity, such as a ticket being closed or an issue being closed, creates artifacts. And we can look at those artifacts to see if problems are happening over and over in the same places or with the same people. So you can even take this proactive preventative approach to see those individuals who accelerate outcomes and have fewer fires in their groups. Now, finally, if you've got a lot of fires going on in your area, you might want to step back and ask yourself, what are we really trying to solve for here? What is the minimum viable path in order to produce the outcome that we're looking for? What are the preventative measures that could have been in place that we can start doing today that would eliminate this problem that I'm facing right now? This is a complex topic, and it is more of a culture of quality than it is just something you can do today and never do again. In fact, you work this proactive preventative into your process design. I know we didn't have a lot of time to cover this topic today, but if you have questions about being proactive and preventative in the same approach to solving problems, the same approach to reducing risk, then you want to visit me at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. I'm Justin Hitt. I manage a newsletter for high-income professionals and entrepreneurs who want to think in ways that solve big problems, who want to transform business relationships into profits guaranteed. And this has been about a unique and valuable approach of being proactive preventative, where you address the problems that you face in such a way so that they may not ever happen again, or so that you can reduce their risk over time. I want to thank you for listening and thank you for joining this podcast. Your subscription and questions help me determine what topics to cover. I'm always looking forward to hear from you. Thanks again. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations.